Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wine Around the World. We're in for a big treat tonight. Steve is going to talk to us about wines for warmer weather, and we're having warmer weather, and warmer weather is on the way. We always like to do a shout out to Capital Federal for funding the retroactive program, as well as the uh, Katzmans, Sharon and David Katzman, their foundation, which pays some of the
Stephen
bills
Paul,
around
Stephen
here.
British,
And we're
South Florida,
grateful to
Nora.
them for that. So I'm just going to get quiet here and see
You have
what
to have
wonderful things
somebody.
Get that
Steve
thing out of
has
the
to
way.
tell us. I'm going to
Can
mute some.
everybody? Yeah, let's
Yeah,
mute.
well, there we go.
Go.
Um, well, I think we're all mute. We're ready to go. And Steve, tell us about wines for warmer weather since we're having some.
Certainly. So, essentially, wines for warmer weather are wines that are refreshing. I mean, there are certain wines that we'll have in the wintertime. Think big, rich Cabernet, Syrah, maybe Nebbiolo, but something that has probably richness and weight and maybe a little higher alcohol content. So things that are little more boozy, that would be, like wool blanket in the wintertime. This is we didn't generally don't want that in the summer. We want light, we want refreshing, we want easy drinking. And so those are the wines that we're going to talk about. Um, Everybody should certainly drink what they like. But yeah, when it's hot out, you want something that is, lemonade, seltzer. Those think of things that you would have if you're just absolutely parched. And wine is certainly suitable for that purpose. There are lots of wines that fit that profile. But for the most part, what we're looking for are wines that, I mean, where those wines typically come from, cooler climate regions, regions where the wines do not naturally develop a lot of alcohol or a lot of extract richness. They are nature kind of curtails that, and so we're gonna touch on a few that kind of fit that profile. The first that we're going to hit is a Sauvignon Blanc from the region of the Loire Valley. And Loire has been producing wine for a long, long time, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. It is the birthplace of Sauvignon Blanc. And Sauvignon Blanc has found, I mean, again, for that warm weather wine, we're looking for a wine that bright acidity, so as the climate of that growing region is not going to generate a lot of sugars that will then either stay in the wine or have to be converted to alcohol through fermentation. So Sauvignon Blanc is as we've talked about in previous tastings, is a cool climate varietal. So it originated in areas where the days are warm but the nights are cold. It also has some nice benefits. Sauvignon Blanc breaks from dormancy. It emerges from dormancy a little late, so where it is very cold, it doesn't get slant. The cold can continue. So the grapes do not emerge when there might be a late frost. Typically, they will emerge a little later. They don't mind warm weather. So we certainly produce Sauvignon Blanc in, say, Napa Valley, where we're also producing Cabernet Sauvignon. But where it really likes to live is in that cool region, usually next to water. In the case of the Loire Valley, we're talking about a river valley that connects to the Atlantic Ocean, so it's drawing in cool air, but is also moderated by the river itself. So and that helps retain the acidity in the wine. helps retain that kind of brightness. And so Sauvignon Blanc has been in the Loire for, as I said, maybe 500-600 years. It does very well in warmer climates. So Bordeaux, for example, a little further south, is a great locale for Sauvignon Blanc. But Bordeaux too has close proximity to the ocean, close proximity to a river or several. So those help moderate. But Loire is really is Sauvignon Blanc's homeland. Some of you may be a big fan of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, so also an area where the climate is very cool. Um, you've certainly got water close in close proximity, so that moderates the temperature, and you get that really racy acidity. And that's again, that's what we're looking for in summer wines. We want that tartness, that brightness, that lightness, and it just, I mean, it complements the climate. I mean, the environment that we're in. So, when it's warm outside, a nice chilled glass of Sauvignon Blanc is delicious. We're also generally our dining in the warmer months are a little lighter. We don't I love like pot roast and short ribs year round, but that's probably not the most ideal meal, say in July. Little heavy. And Sauvignon Blanc is very good at pairing with lighter proteins, certainly fish, chicken, pork, salads. I mean, it kind of depends on the salad. There are certain times where some of the salad components will kind of give Sauvignon Blanc a little bit of a, you'll notice a little bit of a metallic taste, but it is fairly versatile with picnic foods, summer barbecue foods. It's that's the profile of the wine.
Mhm.
So, Touraine is a sub-region of the Loire. Again, I love Loire. I mean, many people will kind of conjure memories of those castles that sit in the middle of the river, magnificent riverbanks planted with all sorts of things. I mean, many of the great produce markets in Paris come from. I mean, the produce they're selling is from the Loire. It is the kind of the workhorse garden for Paris. Um, but this area is just, I mean, it's beautiful area, and nature really does a nice job with the wines from the food and wines from this region. So as I said, the first wine that we're going to taste is a 2023 Sauvignon Blanc from Touraine, and yeah, I mean, the moment it kind of hits your lips, your mouth waters. I mean, it attacks with acidity. Um, Taste a little bit of passion fruit, tropical fruits, definitely. Different from say like New Zealand. New Zealand leads with a kind of a grapefruit pith
Yes.
profile. Very much, I mean, that's very much distinguished in its flavor. I mean, that's kind of what people like, that grapefruit note. And I think we've talked about this in the past. In large part, that's due to the fact that uh, most of the vineyards in New Zealand, the vast majority are planted to one specific clone of Sauvignon Blanc, a clone called UCD1, and that is by design. You should notice grapefruit notes in that. Um, the Loire Valley is not as homogeneous as New Zealand is as far as the clones that they're using. Many of the clones that they're using have been there for centuries and have been adopted because they take on qualities that particularly the food. I mean, the French, every wine is simply a condiment for the food, and the flavor profile. I mean, So this area, you've got freshwater fish that are definitely part of the menu here, but you're close enough to the coast that definitely seafood, shellfish, things like that come into play. And this flavor profile really, really, really adapts well to those menus. But again, lighter proteins, chicken, pork. Um, Beef, it might be a little bit more acidic. I mean, it's not this particular style, Napa Valley, for example, which has a warmer climate than Loire. The Sauvignon Blanc develops a little more of a creamier texture. You also find that in Bordeaux. So this probably is not the greatest pairing for a steak. Um, but again, we're in the summertime. So, if we're having steak, we may be having smaller portions of it. We may be even like steak salad. I mean, things are the idea is to match the menu with the season. And we typically go lighter in the summertime. But this profile I love. It's sort of sad, a little bit because one of the things that we've noticed uh, as the wine industry has kind of come into a time where at least in our industry, nobody doubts that the climate is changing. And so this wine, I mean, in the 90s, when I was studying wine, um, Sauvignon Blanc from this region was kind of stereotypical uh, lemon juice on crushed oyster shell. It was racy acidity, screaming high acidity, lots of minerality, but it did not have an abundance of tropical fruits. There were some subregions that did, but we're seeing now more and more of a warmer temperature showing up in the wine, and this one has it. I mean, you like I said, um, on the nose. There's sort of a gooseberry. Passion fruit is the one that I'm getting the most. They're crazy expensive, but if you are so inclined, when you do see fresh passion fruit in the grocery store, they're usually like maybe $3 a passion fruit. I mean, they're definitely an expense, but fresh passion fruit is spectacular, and I mean, it's a couple spoonfuls of just flavor packed vitamin C. So this has that nose. Um, Sometimes you get a little tropical fruit. I'm not getting, I mean, a pineapple rather. I'm not getting any pineapple, but um, really a beautiful kind of. Again, I'm thinking, kind of it's warm weather. I'm on a beach somewhere. And tropical fruits and flowers are in abundance, and that's kind of what I'm getting off this. But um, yeah, this is a great example. It is, I mean, where nature does the work, we really do find some spectacular examples of wine. I mean, this is, 14, $15, something like that. And um, just a beautiful example. I will say, sadly, um, uh, because many in our industry are aware and concerned about tariffs. This will not be a $14 bottle going forward if the tariffs stick. I would say I'd still probably pay $20 for it. Quality wise, this is I mean, I'm knowing what a $20 bottle tastes like. This could fit that range. It wasn't intended to, but that could happen. But yeah, delicious little Sauvignon Blanc, and I again this is where the grape is supposed to be, and this is it's one of the things that we kind of focus on when we're buying wine. there are certain areas where we know that the product will be both quality and affordable. There are other areas where we know that quality might be there, but affordability, there's
Mhm.
not enough nature doing the work, and therefore humans have to step in, and that's when we will often see price hikes. So, um, in fact, I was telling Laurel I had hoped to have some to taste some wines from Texas, which um,
Mhm.
definitely the quality of the wine from Texas is absolutely there. Unfortunately, the price of those wines is beyond what I am comfortable with at the moment. I was tasting some wines about a month ago, and really the quality was there, but I can find European versions for about half the price of the same grape, same quality. Uh, just it's frustrating, but no, this is an example of where I guess after 500 years or 600 years, if you're still doing it wrong, you really need to maybe pay a little more attention,
Mhm.
because we've figured all these little things out. But yes, this is an example where nature is making a really great wine. And
And that sounds very romantic when you say nature takes care of everything.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to ask a quick question. Someone put in the chat, this wine goes well with quiche too, which
Oh,
is
most certainly. Yeah.
definitely. What you said that when people get involved, I'm
Mhm.
just curious, how do people, and it drives up the price. Is it too technical to tell us
No, no,
how
no.
how that works?
No, I mean it. So the example I like to use is I grew up in Arizona, and in my backyard, we had grapefruit and oranges and occasionally kumquats and tangelos, and you didn't need to do anything. I mean, you fed them, you watered them, but nature was doing that work. I have a lemon and now a lime tree that I grow in my yard during the summer, and in my living room during the winter. And yes, those are both the same kinds of things that grew in Arizona, but I have to do a lot of work to get them to behave, and to do what I want them to do. And a lot of that nature would kill them. Nature would say, you know what? You're planted in the wrong place. So this frost will take you out of commission.
Mhm.
So what often happens is winemakers will they will fall in love with first an idea, because wine there's I mean there wine is farming, and there are some things that are exciting to farm, and other things that are both that are certainly necessary but not as exciting. And growing grapes, it's exciting. I mean, there's celebrations that happen when the harvest occurs. There's a lot attached to it. So often what happens is people fall in love with the idea of making wine, and then maybe they fall in love with a grape that they had somewhere. And that's the issue. In Kansas, we don't have a lot of farmers that are trying to establish orange groves.
Yeah.
Now they could, and those would be very costly. I mean, there would be no real economic benefit to doing that, but you could do that. And that's kind of what happens with wine. I mean, I can see, as there, for example, there are we live in a very fertile area. I mean, we are a bread basket, so there are a lot of things that we can grow. Grapes, as an example, don't really like fertile soil. I mean, they do, but not to their benefit. When grapes are planted in overly fertile soil, they just produce lots of very, very average grapes.
Mhm.
And when you go to the places around the world where where wine has been grown for a long time, they don't want the grapes to do whatever they want to do. I mean, a grapevine can produce 6 to, in some cases, 8 to 10 tons of fruit per acre. And some people say, well, that's great. That the farmer is going to make a lot of money if, certainly they're going to make a lot of money if they sell, or more money than they would, if they were selling 10 tons than if they were selling two. That's not entirely true. The wineries that people might visit in Napa Valley, for example, they would never try to grow that many grapes. They actually will let the birds. I mean, they will. It's called fruit drop. They will go through and they will actually cut out clusters of grapes because they want to limit the amount of fruit that vine produces. So 2 to 3 tons is actually what most high-end wineries are looking for, and really closer to two, in some cases under two. So where when nature's doing the work, it's where the grape wants to grow. And in many cases, I mean, unfortunately for us as Americans, the vast majority of grapes that we love most do not come from the United States or North America. They come from Europe. And so we have to get those grapes to adapt to our system of doing things. And where we have climates that mimic Europe, we get great wine. California, I mean, you're next to mountains and water. Those are the two things that grapes love. Because if again, you're next to water, the temperature is moderated, you're next to mountains, the soil is probably not highly nutritious because erosion has taken it somewhere else. And so you get this perfect balance. So yeah, when nature does the work, humans don't have to intervene, and when humans don't have to intervene, it costs less money. And so some of the best wines of Europe are places that. Sorry, there we go. Um, where places are have done the best over time. Uh, a lot of it is just basically where humans have figured out this grape grows very well here. It makes a delicious product. We like it. We know what we have to do. We know what we don't have to do. I mean, another example, many wines, in certain parts of the world where they have evolved, um, they don't the grapes have adapted to things that, for example, well, sorry, uh, to illustrate, right now it's very humid outside, in our environment. And when it's very humid and when there is not a lot of breeze, and humidity maintains, you develop problems with mold and mildew. Those are devastating to grapes because grapes, as you can imagine, when you look at a grape cluster, it's fairly tight. There are some clusters that have more airspace, breathing room around them, but a lot of grapes grow in very tight clusters. Well, if you have humidity or you have moisture that sticks around, those grapes develop mold and mildew. Well, then, as humans, we have to intervene. We have to. There are many fairly benign treatments. Certain sulfur compounds are fairly good at dealing with mold and mildew. But ideally, you want nature to handle that. And so, where there is humid climate, where a grape would choose to live would be, yeah, the morning might be a little humid, but then in the afternoon there's a breeze, and that breeze dries the grape cluster out and mitigates the issue of mold and mildew. So again, if you don't have to treat for mold and mildew or other pests of different types, if nature doesn't allow those pests to exist, then you end up with better product and you're not having to treat it. I mean, there's certain areas where the soil, it just, because of the composition of the soil, there's certain vineyard pests that can't exist. Now, in other areas where they can, we have to treat for them. But if you're growing certain varietals in usually it's a fairly sandy soil, but they're vineyard pests that don't like sand. And so again, you're not having to deal with that. So that's where nature does the best job. It always
Yeah.
has. It probably always will. I mean, I've had wines that are. I mean, there is certainly technology that is making wine better, but at the end of the day, it's an agricultural product that is dependent upon humans putting it in the right place, and I think that will always continue.
Mhm. That makes me think of the famous real estate location, location,
100%.
location. Yeah.
100%. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, everything else is secondary.
Yeah.
And so, when people are planting grapes, really the first question they should ask is, if I own the land, what does the land want?
Right.
What grape will grow well here?
Mhm.
And unfortunately, for some people, the answer may be nothing. The answer may be not grapes, and it's important, it's really imperative that we say, oh, okay, all right, I'll take that, that's the final word. I'm going to grow almonds, or I'm going to grow, well, actually, almonds is a bad example because almonds often do grow in the same places that grapes like to grow. But I'm going to have to grow lettuce. I'm going to have to grow other things that want a warmer climate and more fertile soil.
Right. Mhm. I think I remember reading that at the beginning of Kansas, someone was trying to grow silkworms.
Yeah,
They thought that we could do silk here.
yeah, and they need mulberry, or they need mulberries. Is that what? Wait, no.
You,
What is
I
silkworm
don't know.
live off of?
I have a big mulberry tree, and I was
No,
wondering.
I think no, it's not.
It's mulberries. You're right.
Is it
Yeah,
mulberries? Yeah, yeah,
mulberry.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean I mean, I guess in theory that would be good, but you probably, I don't know. I'm guessing that you'd want an environment that was a little more hospitable to, and I don't know how silkworms overwinter.
Don't either. Not
You know,
here.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, that's just it. Like every place has certain agricultural crops that just do well. I mean,
Mhm.
we grow wheat and soybeans because wheat and soybeans really dig, and corn. They like
Corn.
soil, they like our climate, and we can do it better for less.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, interesting story. The brewery, which I love, very very much a fan of, Fields and Ivy. Um, they, initially set up their business plan to utilize local grain as much as possible, and what they found was, yes, we can grow a lot of grain. In fact, right now there's a beer out, a wheat beer called Summer Pasture, it is all Kansas grain. And in fact, I think it's even all Douglas County, Kansas grain.
Cool.
But unfortunately, barley is something that um, that a lot of brewers like to use, and barley really wants to grow a little further north.
Mhm.
And I think we can grow winter barley maybe, um, but we don't have two crops a year, and so that was one of the things that they discovered. They're like, we still have to buy that from Canada.
Yeah.
We're not we don't have that ability. We could do it, but nobody would buy our beer because it would be so expensive.
Okay.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, what's possible. There's a lot of things that are possible, but whether it's possible and the consumer will pay for it, that's the next question. So,
That's
um,
amazing.
yeah, letting nature be the guide. It's such a good strategy. It works out more often than not,
Yes.
Go with the flow.
Yes. Call your mother.
Well, call your local farmer.
Yeah.
No, that is really, I mean, yeah.
Mother Nature.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, the what nature will do is better than what we can do in most cases. All right. Any questions about the Sauvignon Blanc? Well, if not, we will move on to the next one. So
Excellent.
I'm just gonna tell you straight away. When the concept of chillable reds became started moving into the mainstream, I wasn't completely on board because in most cases, uh, I would argue that in the United States we drink our reds, our whites too cold and our reds too warm. And so chilling is, I mean, cooling is important, but much like the issues that we encounter with having our whites too cold, when a wine is too cold, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, it closes down. Um, where we're going to smell and taste things, those occur when the wine volatilizes, and when it's very cold, it won't interact with oxygen to create flavors and aromas and whatnot. So when the chillable wine thing came out, I was fairly initially fairly skeptical, but I like the idea because at the end of the day, for the most part, I would argue that the concept of chillable reds really took hold in California. And to a lesser extent on the East Coast, but let's just say California first, followed by say New York and the larger coastal cities. And really the idea was we need to make all wine more accessible to people, and so one way of doing that would be to make it less formal. And the concept of chillable, it's like it definitely, I mean, you're not really thinking about the beautiful Austrian polished crystal stem and you decant it and all of that. It really is. No, you take it out of the fridge, you pour it into whatever glass is convenient, and you slug it down. And you sit out in the back, and you have it with your burger, whatever. You just meat and cheeses, whatever. And so I like that. I mean, I'm very much. I think that the wine industry needs to do everything it possibly can to entice new customers, new consumers, new. I mean, on their terms. I mean, the traditions of wine, I believe will always remain. But the we definitely need to convince the next drinker, the next consumer of wine, why should I do this? And
Mhm.
it the easiest argument is, well, because it's enjoyable, it's fun. And so this chillable notion, that was sort of in that vein. It was like, well, let's make it more casual. Let's take some of the formality out of it and let's make it more casual. Um, where it sort of lost me was there were certainly some wines that I've had that were marketed as chillable that I really did find no, I would not agree that was. I mean, for example, there was a wine that I had from California, and I loved the portfolio. A great winemaker, delicious wine, great provenance. And they had one red blend that on the bottle, very bold print, chillable. And so the first time I had it, I had it in that way, and I actually took a pass on the wine. I did not think I had a customer for it, and I did not. It didn't appeal to me. It just it seemed closed and muted. But I took the bottle home. It was a sample bottle that had been given to me, and I took the bottle home, and it probably sat on my counter. And a couple days later, I went back and I tried it, and it was at maybe 70 degrees at this point, and I had it, and I was like, that's delicious. I really like that. And so I ended up bringing that wine in, and I did sell quite a bit of it, but it wasn't. I mean, I specifically told people, chill it if you want, but I would not advise that. I did not think it drank better in that chillable version. And that was like, well, why didn't it? And my answer was, it was too full bodied. It was too rich of a wine. It had more tannin than I thought was needed. It was really like if you just took a bottle, say, of Cabernet, and you chilled it down to 50 degrees. And that's kind of what we're talking about. We're not talking about like refrigerator temperature chilled.
Okay.
It's cooler than a wine cellar, but warmer than your refrigerator. That's really the sweet spot for that style. But so it got me to thinking, well, what do I find to be in that chillable format? And
We had a quick question,
oh, go
excuse me.
ahead.
What
Absolutely.
was the name of the wine that you thought was better, not chilled?
It was a wine from Brown family.
Okay.
And but it was a wine that, like I said, they marketed it as a chillable red. And I really enjoyed the wine. It's a Napa Valley producer. There is a Brown in Washington. This is not that.
Brown. Okay.
But it is, yeah, it's a winery out of Napa, and it was a delicious wine, but it wasn't good when it was like 50
Cool.
degrees, and it was just way too cold.
Yeah.
And so it got to me thinking, all right, well, what really does make a chillable red? And I would say that for the most part, chillable reds, as we were talking about earlier, the Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc is a cool climate grape. The grapes that I've found to be best in their chillable form are also cool climate grapes. Because where a wine is when a wine is grown in a cooler region, it typically develops more acid and less tannin. Those are exactly the qualities you want for a chillable red. You don't want mouth drying astringency. You want tartness, and those typically will, when you do chill them down, the flavors still remain. You still get I mean, usually they're kind of cherry berry. I mean, like, yeah, like sour cherry, uh, dark cherry, plum, raspberry, not so much blueberry, not so much blackberry, but maybe some cranberry, but lighter cherry and berry flavors. And so when we were talking about the theme for this tasting, it was summer wines, and it's like, well, I really do want to address the chillable red because, like I said, right now in California, chillable reds, every restaurant has a chillable red on their menu right now. I mean, it really has taken over a lot of the wine scene in the casual wine scene in California. Lots of people are doing wines specifically to be chilled down and sometimes even put on ice. I mean, I think when you think of other chillable wines, well, sangria is probably the most obvious. And generally, when sangria is made, it's the wines that are used in the base of sangria are high acid reds. They're not big, rich, full bodied anything. They're lighter, juicier, and then they get amended with fresh fruits. And because they don't have a lot of typically cool climate wines don't have a lot of alcohol. I mean, if they're not developing sugars, they're not developing alcohol through fermentation. So, sangria, you usually add a little addition of some brandy, or in the case of white sangria, maybe gin. But but the chillable nature, it's like it's bright, it's juicy, it's refreshing, it's very quaffable. You're not really there to ponder the complexities of the wine. You're just like, oh, that was delicious. I'll have another glass. And I actually I looked. I mean, I went through a number of wines before I picked this one, and um, it's I would say it's not the quintessential chillable red, um, but it is a great example. So I was happy to go with it. Like I said, I've there. I think it probably is just that I still do struggle a little bit with the concept. But this one hit all the marks. So what we have for the chillable red is a producer out of Austria, and Austria definitely cool climate region. You know, their whites are things like Gruner Veltliner and Riesling and varietals that really want to live on the side of a mountain when it's very cold, or next to a cold river. The two grapes here, the first is Zweigelt, and Zweigelt is a hybrid grape. It originally, in the 20s, 30s, a Frenchman created this hybrid. It's a cross between an Austrian grape called Blaufränkisch, which is, I mean, the funny thing is, both Blaufränkisch and its other parent, Saint Laurent, are they're kind of Pinot Noir. So blending Zweigelt with Pinot Noir seems like a good pairing because they are very, very, very similar. But so Zweigelt is a hybrid grape of Saint Laurent and Blaufränkisch. So grapes that again do well in cool climates. This wine is and Pinot Noir. So Pinot Noir can be very complex and kind of brooding, and depending on where it's grown, it can also be like kind of light, bright, and juicy. And so in this case, it's on the light, bright, and juicy side. Um, but on the nose, you get that kind of. I mean, it leads with some Pinot Noir notes. I smell that kind of that cherry, backed with a little maybe cedar wood or something like that. But it smells very Pinot-esque. But the Zweigelt, which is very low tannin, I wouldn't say it waters down the Pinot, but it does. It lightens it up. And so you end up with this wine that, with a cool temperature on it, it's not going to close down because it's not relying on tannin. I mean, that's the real thing. I mean, tannin seems to lock down the fruit. But when it's chilled and juicy, you just get the kind of the berries, and more of that acidity kind of pops on the palate.
Someone asked what you would pair with the chillable red. What kind of food?
Oh, so again, anything that you would have, sitting outside on your deck on a hot day. I mean, this would be a wine that, like, if you were having hamburgers, grilled sausages, bratwurst, anything that you really might throw, barbecue, anything you might throw on the grill in the summertime. Lighter proteins, or if you're having a heavy protein, you're not having a ton of it. Um, but I mean, I would have this with grilled salmon. I would have this, um, yeah, to me, burgers, bratwurst, maybe like a pulled pork sandwich. I mean, it would probably lean more of the protein, more the meaty proteins. But I mean, roasted eggplant, mushrooms, things like that would also play well. It's not something that needs a ton of fat um, to soften it. It's already in that soft state. So,
Pizza?
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, where 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 wine can be thrown off with pizza usually comes from the acidity in the tomato sauce.
Yeah.
Because acid, wine has acid, tomatoes have acid. If they're not matched, one can kind of throw off the other. But I mean, this has bright acidity, and you just know that it's probably gonna do well with that tomato acid.
Mhm.
But yeah, pizza would be wonderful. Pasta with red sauce. I I probably would lean more for the Sauvignon Blanc if I was having like pasta with pesto. Um, but maybe like pesto with some sausage in it. I mean, it would. I think the red needs just a little more fat, just a touch
Yeah.
more fat than the Sauvignon Blanc needs. But I mean, a very again very quaffable. The other thing that
Good word.
before I make this statement and prove myself wrong, yeah. So the other thing that kind of makes a wine, summer friendly is the alcohol. I mean, I mentioned that earlier, but like this is 12%. Um, Higher than say beer, but much lower. I mean, a big full-bodied cab could be as high as 16%.
Mhm.
So, you're the job of that chillable wine is really more to be refreshing than kind of polluting. You don't really want to feel the effects of one glass of wine when it's blazing hot out.
No.
You might want to drink two. And so something of at 12%, it's going to make that more possible and more enjoyable.
Mhm.
Any questions on the or comments on the Beoccult?
How
Uh,
is that chillable red, everyone?
I wanted to make a comment because very interestingly enough, timely to this, last week or this week earlier, my wife has a book club with the Folger Shakespeare Library in DC.
mhm,
And in this particular case, they do kinds of fun things, and they had a cocktail that they recommended to drink for their book club thing. It had to do with Anne Boleyn and French, whatever. But it was interesting, and I made it because it was a cocktail with Pinot Noir,
yeah.
and it's called. I had to find the name. They didn't have it. It's called a Red and Roses Fizz, and
Hmm.
it's chilled glass, slightly chilled Pinot Noir, um, rose. I used a few drops of extract, but rose syrup,
Hmm.
um, tonic water, and not floating a few mint leaves.
Hmm.
And it blew my mind. It was
Yeah. Yeah.
deliciously refreshing, great for the weather.
Mhm.
And I think other than me, I think it was the only time I've ever had a cocktail with red wine. Might have had one or two with white wine that I can remember, but it was great, and it happened to be this week along with this stuff. So it was,
Mhm.
and it was also a Pinot, so it was delicious. It was very good.
Well, that actually, I mean, having not had that cocktail, I can kind of taste it in my head, and those are all things that work well. First of all, Pinot Noir often has notes of cherry, but also strawberry. And strawberries and roses are actually part of the same family. So what you're doing by adding like rose water or rose syrup is accentuating the strawberry notes that you would find naturally in the Pinot Noir. You add a little bit of tonic and humans like slightly bitter things, and that's the quinine in the tonic is one of those things. It kind of in that particular case, it adds a little bit, it buffers a little bit of the tartness of the Pinot Noir. That bitter edge would blunt the acidity, but no, all of those flavors sound delicious.
And the
Uh,
tonic mixed well to deal with the acidity as well.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you
yeah.
didn't get quite the acid taste, but the Pinot Noir was definitely the flavor that came
Yeah,
through.
yeah, yeah.
It was
Well,
nice.
and again, accentuate. I mean, like that little addition of rose water, rose syrup. I mean, that's going to bring out. It sounds funny. It probably was still noticeable as a rose, but rose and strawberry, like you can add just the tiniest amount of rose to a cocktail, and suddenly the strawberry just explodes. And no, it's funny. I was talking with one of my distributors today. Last summer when we were in Portugal, we kind of fell in love with a rosé portonic. So in Portugal, very common to have white port, which is not. It's more. I mean, it's more citrus driven. I mean, has more kind of orange notes to it than the ruby port. But white port, tonic, and a slice of orange or grapefruit, delicious cocktail. We kind of fell in love with the rosé port tonic, which has more of those cherry berry tones to it. But that balance of tart fruits with tonic was just absolutely delicious. Sadly, I still cannot find a rosé port in the market at the moment. So um, I will continue searching, but no, that is, I mean, I guess maybe the Portonic is the original chillable wine, because certainly wine very cold mixed with other things can be delightful. But this, yeah, the straight up just red wine, ice cold. I think if you use the guide. Is it a cool climate grape? I mean, the wine from Brown family, I think, had maybe both Zinfandel and Cabernet in it, and it just was. I was not impressed with that wine as a chilled wine. But I like this very much, and I think even on the back of the bottle, yeah, it says serve at 63. I don't know why 62 is not good, but they've definitely settled on 63. I would say it could do much cooler, in fact. I mean, I tried this out at about 55 and it was very tasty. I mean, most times you will notice as a wine warms up, you do notice more flavor. But, in the summertime, um, not always, that's not always the goal. The goal may be just something cool and refreshing. And, um, you know, room temperature for certain wines will not fit that refreshment kind of, that quality. But no, we're gonna see more. I think we're gonna see more chillable reds. Again, my belief is the best examples are going to be things like Pinot Noir. There are a lot of really cool. I've had a number of pretty tasty chillable reds made from a very close relative to Pinot Noir, Gamay Noir. But those are all wines that are very, their backbone is acid, and their flavor profile is like, refreshing red fruits. So, again, tart cherries, tart berries.
Mhm. There was a question in the chat or a comment. Do restaurants serve reds too warm year round? As long as we're
Yeah,
talking about
in the
temperature.
United States, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean it really um the ideal temperature, I would argue, for most red wines is in the low 60s. The average wine cellar can be as cool as 52, as warm as 58. But so I would say the wine should probably be slightly. I mean, I would love it if a winery, I mean, if a restaurant would keep their wine in a cellar at 58 and then bring it to the table. And by the time it gets to my table in my glass, with the glass is obviously not chilled, so that would warm the wine up as well. maybe it's in the low 60s. That would, to me, that would be wonderful because what happens is when it gets warmer, um, alcohol evaporates at a higher rate. You sometimes will get sort of a pruny, stewed fruit note. The kind of the freshness of the wine fades a little bit, and um, so having a wine that has a little more chill on it is better. But yeah, in most cases, the whites are coming out to a table at 40 degrees, and that's fine because it will warm up, but it's not going to be as enjoyable at 40 as it might be at 45 to 50 for a
Mhm.
white. But yeah, reds are notoriously. I mean, I will visit restaurants and I will see like a wine rack above the bar, and I would say if you ever see a wine rack above the bar, maybe wave off your wine service that night, just because there's probably no spot in the restaurant that's warmer than above the bar. Yeah, heat rises, and the heat in a bar is going to be pretty high.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, a lot of times wine is not given the respect that it probably deserves, and is stored in places that, I mean, I know there used to be a restaurant. It's still in Lawrence under new management, but the wines, very expensive wines, were stored in the back hallway leading out to the alley,
Oh,
and it would get notoriously balmy there. And every once in a
Yeah.
while, they would have to mop up wine that was spilling out of the bottle because the cork had popped. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
that would not be a good place to store wine. But um, I do know for a fact, I won't mention the name of the restaurant, but I do know for a fact that they do no longer store their wine that way.
Well, they learned something. That's
Yes.
good.
Well, the new owners changed the policy.
Knew a
So
little bit better. Yes.
yes,
my
yeah,
limited experience was the few years I worked at Pachamama's, and they were a big enough restaurant that they had a wine room,
yes,
which we kept at about 55 degrees. But with going in and out, most wine came out of there at the low 60s, and
yeah.
it was pretty nice to have
Yep.
that.
Yep.
But there are restaurants the size of that wine room now, so it's
Right.
pretty hard to do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Although the
Well,
bagged wine, I think, gives you an opportunity to do that, behind a wall.
Well, and they've also yeah, there's a lot of technology that's come around in the last 10 years that will better serve the wine and the customer. I mean, there are even I mean, there's a company that makes basically what looks like, I mean, they just have kind of openings in a refrigerator, and you just stick the wine into these openings. And so, if a restaurant is pouring a by the glass, the reds are at 58 degrees and the whites are at 45, and they stay pretty close to that. But yeah, no, the and certainly, I mean, there are um, the kind of the probably what will eventually be more commonplace just because of its efficiency, kegged wine, where essentially a winery is filling a beer keg with wine, and that can be kept at temperature perfectly, and siphoned, propelled to wherever it needs to go at the right temperature. Um, but yeah, there are a lot of restaurants rather that treat wine maybe in the same way they treat their spirits, which spirits, they don't really care. I mean, they don't like to be cooked, but they're very temperature tolerant, and wine is not that way.
All right.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think we're just at 6 o'clock. Wow, I learned a lot.
Yeah, no,
Temperature is
definitely.
important. Yeah.
Definitely ask questions when the chillable reds are presented, but I would say they definitely have a place. They absolutely do.
Yes, and you're supposed to kind of grab them out of the refrigerator like
Yes,
Dr. Pepper
yes,
and
yes,
throw it
yes,
back with your pizza
yes.
when it comes.
Throw it back, and yeah, probably healthier than Dr. Pepper.
I think so.
I will make that plug, but yeah,
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. We always learn
my
so much
pleasure.
from you. And
I
Steve is going to be taking a couple of months off, working on another project.
I will make a plug. If you all are fans of ice cream, I will be opening up a Betty Ray's ice cream shop next to my store, hopefully in the late summer, early fall.
Lovely. Well, I am a quart low.
Absolutely. Yes.
Every day I'm a quart low of ice
Yes,
cream.
yes, yes.
Thank you so much. And I guess we'll see you again possibly in October.
That sounds great.
And in the meantime, this summer, just so that we don't get too sober in every way, we're going to start visiting a few breweries and checking out some beer flights and kind of getting involved. I'm very
Wonderful.
interested in this summer pasture
Oh,
that you
yes. No,
mentioned. That
Fields and
sounds cool.
Ivy, big fan. Definitely patronize
Okay.
those guys. They do a great job.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming. And thank you, Steve, for sharing your amazing knowledge about wine. And everybody be safe out there. And
Thank you so
we
much.
will see you and be at Betty Ray's. Let us know when the big opening
Oh,
comes.
100%, 100%.
Okay. That'll be wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for being with us tonight. And we'll see you at the next Wine Around the World or Beer Around the Block. Have a
Cheers.
good evening. Thanks, Steve. Bye, everyone.